What's going on, everybody? We're back. Episode number 3, Combat and Cocktails. Myself, Shawn Orr. You can find me at Twitter at MMA Fox. Shawn at Shawn Orr. Guys, if you like the show, drop a like, subscribe. And yeah, it's been, what, Shawn, about a month since we last did one of these?
Yeah, it's been a long time. It's been scheduling issues. And also sometimes there's just nothing to talk about, right? Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna spend like 5 minutes breaking down or recapping UFC Des Moines, I think, because there was nothing to talk about much for that card going in, and there's not really all that much to talk about coming out. So, yeah, but it is what it is. Before we do anything, Shawn, why don't you explain the cocktail and why don't you explain how we're gonna make it?
Oh, yeah. Let me have my phone do that for me. So this cocktail is like a play on a margarita, but it's with mezcal. And because we just had Cinco de Drinko de Mayo, we figured we'd stick with the theme and use a little mezcal. So
yeah,
it's called Employees Only Mezcal Margarita. It looks like it's pretty simple and straightforward, right? It's 2 ounces of mezcal, 1 ounce of lime juice, ½ ounce agave nectar, ½ ounce of, how do you say it? Cointreau?
Cointreau. It's just a liqueur. I'm using Grand Marnier. It's the same thing.
Okay. So yeah, just a liqueur. So yeah, you basically just add those ingredients to a shaker with ice. You shake it up until it's chilled. And yeah, then you pour it into a glass. And by the way, I forgot a glass. So give me a second here.
All right, so Shawn's going to go get a glass. I am going to endeavor to do this. Does anybody, if there will be anybody in the chat, know whether or not, I'm sorry, I'm holding one of these little reverse shot glasses. Does anybody know if the top one is 2 ounces or 1 ounce? Because I'm not sure. And this could get pretty aggressive if I'm wrong about this. Shawn, do you know if the top part of one of those like little metal thingies is 2 ounces or 1 ounce?
Not a clue.
Great.
I think, hold on. So the small one is a ½ ounce.
Okay.
And the big one is 1 ounce.
Got it.
Mine happens to be labeled.
Well, that is helpful.
Very
helpful for me.
So yeah,
but yeah, guys, if you're waiting for us to make these cocktails or fuck something up, drop what your best bet was in the chat from last week. I didn't have many bets. Did you, Shawn?
I actually did. So I had a few bets, some more unfortunate than others. I'd say the best bet was Juliana Miller, which was something you kind of threw me on to. The more I thought about it through the week, I was like, yeah, this seems pretty obvious. But I don't feel like I went big enough. I only had 1.5 units on it. And I wish I went much bigger because I do think it was I don't want to say a generational spot, but like a very obvious spot where if you're getting plus 200, you got to go for it, right?
Is it 2 ounces of the liqueur, Shawn?
I did 2 ounces of mezcal.
Yeah.
And then, ½ ounce of the liqueur.
Oh, okay.
So 1 ounce lime juice, ½ ounce liqueur, ½ ounce agave nectar. Yeah, what was your best?
I mean, same thing. So I kind of, I mean, I made money on the fight, but I kind of made a bit of a mess of it because I had a unit and a half on Miller money line at like plus 195, but then I also had like a half unit on round 2 plus 1,800, and I had another half unit on round 3 plus 2,500, which is, I mean, pretty big sizing for round props, to be honest. Yeah. But like, I felt like they were pretty asymmetrically tied to like Miller getting her game going with just the way she fights. And I mean, in round 2, she had the opportunity too. So it was like, they were probably good bets, but like, if I was going to go, I was talking to Gombas a bit about it, and he's like, if you're going to put a half unit, you should have had like 3 units on the money line, you know? And I'm like, yeah, that's probably an accurate way to think about it.
Yeah, except for the one time when you don't do that and you cash, and then you're like, I'm a fucking genius.
Yeah. I was sitting at this wedding, and our boy Brooks had messaged me, good bet, because I told him about my prop bets on it, and I got so excited. I'm like, oh my god, did the round 2-3 hit? Like, I'm literally going to like have an orgasm at the table while these speeches are going on if that happened. But no such luck,
Which,
unfortunately.
would be such a great thing to do at a wedding, just have an orgasm.
Unfortunately, I gotta say, because I think you were on the same side, if I'm not mistaken. I had Tate pretty big. I don't really. I mean, I had her minus 135. Like, I kind of feel like the analysis of the fight was pretty much right. Like, she's really just a caught kick at any point. I mean, we knew she'd win round 3, and it seems pretty clear if she ever gets on top in that fight, she's like one caught kick at any given time from, just easily winning it. So, like, I don't know. I felt like the closing line, like minus 180, was right. Like, I it sucks to have lost that much on it and had so little on Miller. But what do you think?
Yeah, so for me, like the way I measure a lot of this stuff is by the celebrations on Twitter. So the amount of celebrating that I saw over Yana Santos' bets indicates to me that they felt like they got fortunate because they watched the fight. They saw what happened in round 3. So then in the end, they're like, yeah, I told you guys all not to bet Tate. But I agree with you. I mean, we talked about it all week. And Yana grabbed the fence in round 1. So yeah. If Tate had gotten her down with that first like berserker attack that she was doing, the whole fight would have snowballed. But she didn't, and she looked old and slow.
But even round 1 was close beyond that, It wasn't like it was a...
It was, but Yana, like, she definitely looked quicker. She looked younger. She had way better footwork. And the thing that Yana did that kind of surprised me was she just did not kick a lot. She kicks a ton in her fights. And once she wasn't kicking, I was like, I feel like we're in trouble a little bit here. But Tate probably could have finished her in round 3, right? I mean, if she had just ground and pounded her, she probably would have finished her. So she has nobody to blame but herself.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. I was on – it broke. I think I'd won 4 straight cards prior to that. So, I mean, I'm hoping to get back on the wagon this week. Was there anything else? I rewatched a couple fights from last week. Was anything – I have – you and I talked about this, but I have major regrets over not betting Surrey CD last week. The line movement freaked me out, like, because it seemed obvious on tape, but I hate bet. And like, there's going to be a fight that we'll talk about tonight that like I feel similarly on, where I felt like I had a pretty good angle, but I'm like, man, like, whenever I play the other side of reverse line moves, I feel like it rarely goes well, Yeah.
Yep. We both kind of called that fight, right? It's just he's just better, really everywhere. I mean, he's a better striker. He's better in the clinch. He's a better grappler. He almost finished him in round 3. I ended up with an ITD bet on him, which, made me kick myself at the end.
I bet under.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so I'm like, I shouldn't just it was money line because I thought that the money line was good. But sometimes, you convince yourself out of stuff, and it's just I was waiting. I think we were both waiting for like a 5 or 10 cent better price. And it's like,
which is the margins at that point. It's like minus 135, minus 130 versus minus 125 is like
grow some balls, right?
Yeah. Especially when he wins the fight fairly easily, it hurts even more. The main event was pretty nondescript. I don't think we have much to chat about there. Is there anything else you want to highlight on it? I rewatched some, but I was out for like the entire card.
Yeah, I mean, I could talk about some of it. First of all, shout out to your guy Brooks that you talked about earlier for that D-Rod KO call. I mean, that was very smart. Because I was talking with him, and I know he had played that. That was one of his positions. RDR beating Bo Nickel. It feels real bad to miss that Bo Nickel fade. Not going to lie, but I'm hoping that people are going to be so low on Bo in the future that we get decent prices on him. And then did you watch the Bacoa versus Loader execution?
Yeah. I didn't bet the Bacoa KO, which also felt horrible because it almost seemed like this is going to sound so stupid, but it almost seemed like too obvious of a way to play it, and then I saw some money came in on Loader, and I'm like, is this just like Square taking a 280 KO number, while the market's moving towards Loader? But no, he killed him.
Yeah, sometimes like this whole like read the market stuff, it is very useful, but like I feel like it trips me up sometimes. It talks me out of bets, but
especially this year, market movement's been bad this year, like really bad.
I would agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, how do you like this?
It's pretty good. It's interesting. It's got it's pretty sweet for a mezcal drink, which is interesting. It's got like the sweet and smoky thing going on. I don't mind it. I do not mind it.
I think Mezcal Margarita is where to go.
I love mezcal in general. My wife fucking hates it, and like she likes tequila is like the only liquor she'll drink. So like we never basically have mezcal in the house. Funny story. I was telling Shawn before we came on, as I was trying to find it. I was doing some tape. 950 hits. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go get the drink stuff. Spent the next 10 minutes trying to find the top to my shaker, which was put in my kids' drawer in the kitchen with all like the sippy cups. I'm pretty sure it was my cleaners, and it just makes me think that one day I'm gonna randomly stumble on some drawer in my house I've never found before, and all 5 pairs of my missing sunglasses are gonna be in there as well. So here's hoping to that.
Do you still work with the same company?
Yeah, dude. It's like crazy. Like my wife, I literally just lost a pair of like Louis Vuitton sunglasses. Like, and they were literally just came from my car to my kitchen table. It was the only 2 locations they've ever been, and now they're gone. And I'm like telling my wife, she's like, Eric, we've had them since COVID. They're such nice people. I'm like, I agree they're nice people, but they also have like total randos working for them, who I've never seen before. And like, there's not, at some point, one of these pairs of glasses would have turned up if I was just losing them in the house or leaving them in pants,
Yeah, no, you're getting fleeced. I mean, there's plenty of companies out there that clean houses. You don't have to stick to the one that steals your glasses, right?
I completely agree.
Your wife must really like the owners of this company.
I mean, they're very nice people. I think she's got like a spec because like nobody would do anything during COVID, during lockdown, and she like they would come to our house and like do everything. Yeah. Which I guess is good. That.
Something to be said about that, I will say. It's a good thing for sure, but
the owners don't concern me. It's that they show up with like 3 other people there that I've never seen before. I don't know who these people are or where they're from.
Yeah, that's every cleaning company though, dude. It's a high turnover job for sure.
But anyway, let's move past that fight night. I mean, is there anything you want to say about the main event? I feel Figgy's done. That seems pretty obvious. It's kind of over for him.
He'll probably get more fights, but yeah, nothing significant's going to happen with this guy, right?
It is kind of annoying to me that like I feel like I correctly identified that he couldn't really compete with the elites at bantamweight, and unfortunately, though, I tried to get on the Rob Font train heavy, and against him, and that was just terrible. And he somehow beat Vera, which, I mean, I didn't bet Vera, but it also seems like kind of odd, doesn't it, with how bad his form has looked in his last few fights?
Yeah, I hardly even remember the Vera fight. That's how like unmemorable it is. But I mean, it's tough to fade the guy when he's plus 380 and plus 300 against these guys. But both Jan and Sandhagen were value, so kind of missed it.
Do you think Corey's getting the winner of what's it called, Merab and Shawn?
I mean, probably not, because they'll probably give Umar another shot, right? But Corey is doing everything he's supposed to do. I see he's been cutting like some promotional videos, right? He's shooting skits. He's doing what Merab did. So maybe he'll get that push because he's trying to promote himself. But what do you think?
I think they'll probably give it to Jan if he wins his next fight, but like I'd much rather see like we saw Merab Jan, and not that like it couldn't go differently, but I feel like the dynamic is somewhat the same. Like the kind of pace Merab pushes is just not great for Jan. Like he doesn't like being on the back foot, Whereas Corey, I think it's a much more interesting fight. Like we saw Corey counter grapple reasonably well with Umar, and I don't think Merab has the same threats on the feet as Umar that'll keep Corey much more tentative than he was in that, or as tentative as he was in that fight. So I actually would like to see that fight, provided Merab wins. Which I mean, we could get into that briefly before we dive into this if you want. Do you have any thoughts on that fight?
I mean, I haven't thought about it until right now. I mean, it's a good fight for Merab. I mean, I mean, how much could Shawn have improved his grappling, right? Like, can Shawn fight on the front foot enough to, like, discourage the grappling? I mean, it's an issue. So stylistically, I think it's a tough fight for O'Malley just in general.
I do think those front kicks that he hurt Merab with and was starting to have success with towards the end of the fight, like maybe could be a thing if he goes to them earlier. I don't know. It's kind of weird. I look at the line like minus 275 and I'm like, that's probably right. But also it was such a two-way bet fight the first time. And now it seems like, Merab finally getting market respect for like the first time in his entire career. It does feel like the kind of time that he'd get like lapped or something, And I don't think he's immune to getting knocked out, honestly.
No, clearly not. I mean, the guy, hasn't he gotten dropped? Yeah. Who was that guy during COVID that he fought?
Mariah's hurt him horribly.
Hurt him horribly. Didn't that Julio Gustavo something guy hurt him at one point too?
Lopez might have rocked him. Oh, I mean, Umar rocked him in his last fight.
Yeah.
It's
he's not immune to it, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, O'Malley, I don't know. How much could he have really improved? That's kind of how I view it. And Merab, let's put it this way. So sometimes when we see these fights like this, right, where it's like just a little narrative-y, but like you go into the Merab and O'Malley first fight, and I don't know what the line was, but I'm sure that the public thought that O'Malley was going to win the fight. The public probably did. And Merab kind of looked tentative in the fight at points.
Yeah.
But now he's sort of felt how O'Malley is. And I feel like if he goes full like turbo Merab, like what is O'Malley really going to do to stop that? He's going to have to hurt him, which means his margins are like super thin. If Merab,
I see what you're saying. Like if Merab turns up the pace more, he might just be able to beat him like way worse.
He's felt him, right? He's felt it. That was his first big moment, if we're being honest. Like you could say the Jan fight was, but like that was really his first big moment. And he passed the test. And I don't even think Merab looked particularly good in that fight.
No, I didn't either.
Average Merab performance. So what if he does a good Merab performance, right? So
that's a fair point. And we do see that sometimes. I mean, we just saw it with Dricus and Strickland like a couple months back, right? Exactly. I mean, the first fight, Dricus seemed a lot more confident in the second fight than he did in the first fight with Strickland, pretty much from the jump.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess it is true that it's like the thing that O'Malley has to fix is probably the hardest thing to fix, when it comes to MMA on the fly. So there is something to be said for that. But yeah, let's move into 315 here. I'm going to be in attendance with the Giga Chad. That'll be interesting. I'm flying out, making more or less a day trip to Montreal, flying out at noon on Saturday, flying home at 8 a.m. on Sunday, 1 hour flight each way. Yeah. I'm going. My wife was basically like, "You can go if you're back for Mother's Day brunch." So I am flying directly back into Long Island. Yeah, and then driving right to brunch. So
wait, from the goes. Driving to lunch?
Yeah. So her parents live 20 minutes from LaGuardia, which is where I'm flying from. Yeah. So I'm just gonna take an Uber from there to her parents' house and meet her and all my in-laws and whatnot.
And so hopefully richer.
Yeah. Hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good.
You're not going to be able to live bet though. You're going to be in Canada.
Well, I mean, Bet Online exists and like PPHs exist. That there's got to be some. Although Chad seemed to think that, I don't know, because I was like, Chad, like, are you going to live bet? He's like, I don't know how I'm going to be able to do that. And I'm like, I mean, surely there's some Canadian app or something that you can live bet on.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I would think so. I think he does live bet. Maybe he's thinking because he's in the arena you're not going to have like the reception. Isn't that kind of how it works? Don't they kind of cut the like reception a little bit, or is it just an overflow of like cell phones that just kind of screw up the cell tower?
I think it's an overflow of cell phones because like when I went to the last Newark card I went to when Aljo fought Cejudo, I literally could not get an Uber because my phone just couldn't get like reception with everybody crowded in one area. Was nightmarish. I've already decided if I go back to the Newark card for the O'Malley fight, I'm just going to drive and stay sober because I don't want to go through that again and be in the hood at 2 a.m. trying to get an Uber home. So
well, you can schedule an Uber too.
Can you?
Yeah, I do it all the time for the airport. So just you would schedule it for when you think the event is going to end, like add like 15, 30 minutes onto it and schedule it so it arrives then.
Interesting. Maybe I'll try that.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think of this card? First of all, I mean, should we talk about the title fights before we talk anything here? Because we got two championship fights, both lined somewhat. Actually, both lined competitively, to be honest.
Now they are.
We'll start with the Let's start with the co-main here. Manon Fiorot, minus 120. Comeback on Shevchenko, plus 100. Been a lot of Shevchenko money coming in all week. What do you think? What are your thoughts here?
I mean, my thoughts are that it's probably going to be the same as like most people's thoughts, right? Fiorot is basically going to try and do that clinch style game, probably against Shevchenko, if I had to guess. My thing here is I don't think she's going to be better than her at it. And this is just an assumption, but I think Fiorot, and I know she's won some fights here and kind of, I guess, proved some people wrong, but I still don't think there's a whole lot of depth to her game, personally. I think her correction on her takedown defense was to just take people down and to clinch people. I don't think she would have ever rectified the issue with her ground game. So I think if Shevchenko ends up on top, I think she's going to fuck her up. And then on striking wise, it's kind of tough to bet against Shevchenko, especially when Fiorot is like kind of a janky karate style fighter herself, right? So I think the only thing that could stop Shevchenko from winning this fight, and it's kind of funny to see her as an underdog, would be her age, right? Is she going to fall off a cliff here? But yeah, I think skill for skill, I think she's better than her literally everywhere. What do you think?
I agree with that, but the other side of that is I also kind of think, to me, like, I think Shevchenko is the more skilled striker, but like she's not getting an Alexa Grasso, like a boxer who wants to plod forward at her, who she can easily just kind of sit back and counter box, you know, like she's getting someone who's going to kind of stay on the outside and just try to like spam like stupid side kicks and shit. And that's been very effective for Fiorot. And I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe Valentina, I mean, she's one of the best ever, so she could. Maybe she's got it in her to mix it up and pressure forward into the pocket and exchange with her. But that hasn't really ever been her MO, you know, like she will exchange, but it's not like she's rarely the one who's trying to dictate the exchanges, you know? And you know, Fiorot is going to avoid the pocket like her life depends on it in this fight, I'd imagine.
You don't think she's going to try and clinch her?
I think she will at times. See, I think if she does that, she's going to be in big trouble, in my opinion. Like if she does that, Val's, I don't think Val is less strong than her.
You don't think she's less stronger than her?
Yeah, I think she is commensurately strong to Fiorot. I mean, dude, people forget, like, and when I was taping the Andrade fight, I mean, Val is a fucking hoss, man. Like she is she is an extremely strong woman. So like, I don't think Fiorot is going to have the physicality advantages she normally has. So like, I think that would be a mistake. The thing I just can't get past though is like, I mean, Val's almost 37 years old. I felt, even though she won the majority of striking exchanges with Grasso, I felt like she looked a lot slower in those first two fights than she ever has before. I also felt like she was reacting to shots a lot poorer than she had previously. And I look at this fight and I'm like, man, she's fighting someone who's not going to, who could conceivably just stay on the outside and just spam, you know, volume kicks and shit. I could see Fiorot just being a lot faster and just a lot more volume heavy. And also this kind of just being a hard changing of the guard spot for Val. Like that's kind of, I'm not going to bet the fight because I still have major questions about Fiorot on bottom. I didn't like that Maya got to her back. Like that scares me because if Val gets that position, she's just going to body triangle her and that's going to be the round. But like the two things that I just in my head is like, one, maybe she's over the cliff already. Like we're going to talk about Alexa Grasso, but I don't think Alexa Grasso was ever a championship level fighter, to be honest. I kind of think she got a win and a draw off a couple of big moments that she kind of pulled out of her ass against Val. But like, I didn't think Val looked great in any of the Grasso fights. And I think she is a clear cut above Grasso skill wise. So like now she's fighting somebody who I'd consider better than Grasso. And I worry that she's just going to get badly outpaced here. And yeah, and the other thing is like, what if Fiorot gets on top of her? Like, what if it turns out like the Talia fight happened where she kind of got out muscled, but what if it turns out that Val getting a bit older and Fiorot being as big as she is able to hit a couple takedowns out of the clinch? Like Val historically is terrible up her back, you know? So I don't know. I have a feeling that it's like Val's time is up, but I see your angle on it, you know?
Yeah, I think it really just depends on like what happens where the fight goes. Because I do agree with you that if Val just allows there to be a kicking battle on the outside, Fiorot is probably just going to throw more kicks. But I truly do believe if Valentina ends on top, she could either submit her or do some serious damage based off of what I've seen with Fiorot. I think it's a huge hole in her game. And we always say this too, you know, you can tell with some of these people when they're light in the ass, which she is, it's not too difficult to take them down. It's just the girls Fiorot has been fighting, you know, I don't know the terminology for it because it's not beta, but like some of these women are like not really hosses by any means.
No, not that physical.
Erin Blanchfield is kind of like a goo ball. You know, Caitlin Chikagian is past her prime by a lot, right? And then you've got Jennifer Maia, which is probably the biggest hoss that she's fought, right? And Maia did get a takedown, and she's not even really like that much of a hoss, you know? She's just not a fighter. So yeah, I don't think she's fought anybody physical. So everybody's constantly talking about this, Valentina's fight against Talia Santos, but it's like at least she's fought a Talia Santos, at least she's fought an Amanda Nunes, you know, at least she's fought a Jessica Andrade. This girl hasn't seen any of that, you know, so in a way I do agree with you with the striking metrics, but I also think that like if we're looking at just pure upside in a fight, which I guess you have to you don't weigh it as much in a women's MMA fight because there's not a lot of finishing. I do think that Val has a lot of the upside here, like to finish and do damage.
I said to Dogfather today, and I'm not really interested in Val's money line, but that I felt like Val throughout her career has been a fairly prolific finisher at women's flyweight. And I feel like if she's going to be value and if it's going to be on the back of her grappling, there's probably some value on Val ITD at like plus 385. Because like if she has a big advantage on top, she's very good at passing position and doing damage or submissions from top position, you know?
I mean, it's probably going to be one of the worst. But wasn't that Shevchenko's like comeback fight? Wasn't that like what that was? She was coming off.
No, it might have been off an injury.
Yeah, she was coming back from an injury on that fight. And I remember everybody was fading her with Maya.
But, I mean, Shev's bottom game's been a thing her whole career. She's not very good on bottom. You know, it's her biggest weakness. But let's talk about the main event briefly, and then we'll hop into bets. Jack Della Maddalena taking on Bilal Muhammad. Lot of market love for Jack coming in. Frankly, I understand why to a degree. I feel like there's two different dynamics in play here. It's like on the one hand, like the macro is very good for Jack, right? He's the much younger fighter. He's the much more dangerous fighter. He's the much more dangerous finisher of the two. Bilal, obviously almost 37, off a major injury. All of those are things that favor Jack like pretty significantly. The other side of this is, though, and this is why I just can't get to a jack bet, is I think if Bilal gets his game going, he could look like a huge favorite here. You know, I'm still not sure why he can't be why he can't just do to Jack what he did to Leon. You know, now Jack might be less accepting of the back foot than Leon was, but I still feel like Bilal's going to get a bunch of takedowns here. And I feel like Jack, some of the mistakes he's made against grapplers in the past, Bilal is a lot more likely to punish. Like, obviously, Gilbert Burns would have been too, but Burns also is kind of old and washed himself. Like, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, Burns took him down 7 times. That was a year ago.
Yeah.
But
also, Bilal's a better wrestler.
People keep talking. You just mentioned it too, Bilal coming, injury, but like he's had injury, but Jack has had major injuries. Did you see that? He was like,
it's like a bone something, like bone atrophy or something.
Yeah, and he had to do like 2 procedures on it. So like he's the one coming in on short notice too, right? So it's like he's short notice. He's coming off of serious surgeries. Not like they were like recent, but they were, recent enough to, I guess, cancel out Bilal's concerns. And then it boils down to whose game's going to get going. Is it going to be the grappling or is it going to be the striking? I would bet the grappling personally. He is Pepe, but he also got taken down 7 times by Gilbert Burns, right? So he won that fight because Gilbert collapsed, really, right?
That was sickening. I will say I could see, and I sort of feel like the most likely outcome for this fight is something like Bilal versus Luque, where it's like a pretty competitive fight that Bilal, probably banks off like, 7, 8, 9 minutes of control, but where Jack has, some moments in it. Just because I don't think Bilal is easy to avoid by any means, but I also think, kind of to Pepe's point in the chat, like Leon would just, like when Bilal went forward, Leon never bit down and was willing to exchange with him. He basically just let Bilal back him right to the fence and put him down, Whereas I am not as convinced that Jack is going to accept Bilal just bullying him forward. Jack's got a lot more heart in him. He's got a lot more firepower than, Leon has. If you go back and watch the Luque fight, Bilal had to be very, very, very careful about when he attempted his entries. You had Luque on the front foot for a lot of that fight, and Bilal was basically just trying to time under his strikes. And I could see it being like that because we haven't seen anybody really force Jack to go backwards, in the UFC yet. So I have a feeling it's going to play out pretty competitively. I just can't get past when the grappling gap is as big as it is. Should Bilal get the top position, it's like the floor on Jack is so low at the number. It's like, yeah, his upside is what? It's pick 'em. Maybe he's a tiny favorite, and his downside is he's plus 400.
I mean, I will say if Bilal does get into the extended exchanges, he did a couple times against Leon. I do think Jack could actually make him like pay a little bit in some of those exchanges because it wasn't like Bilal was like shooting, a billion takedowns constantly like Merab. He was setting them up with his hands, so he was putting himself at risk. So I think there is some credence to saying, hey, like maybe Jack is going to like clip him at some point. Bilal is a little older, but
and I'm not sure he's all that durable, to be honest.
Not really. I mean, but the thing about Bilal, though, I will say is he's not durable, but he's shown in a bunch of his fights that he realizes his mortality at the right moment, right? And he will back off. The Luque fight's a really good example, right? Like he really was fully aware of his mortality in that fight, and he fought accordingly just to win the fight. So Jack, Jack's a really fun fighter, but I mean, this is a guy who went to split decision with, the genius that is Kevin Holland. So it's not like he's a cerebral fighter. So it's a tough ask for Jack, in my opinion, but I don't know. Price seems right to me right now.
I was going to say, are you interested in the Bilal side?
Not really, because I think the price is right. Like if it goes to like minus, it's like right-ish for me because I don't have like such a bold take on this fight, right?
Yeah.
I think if Bilal got to like minus like 150, I'd start to get kind of interested, to be honest, because 60%, you basically give what, like 20% finish equity to Jack, you know?
It's about, yeah, I think that's about what I'd give him. Yeah.
I don't think he looks particularly great and it goes the distance scenario. Do you?
I don't know. Unless he's made like pretty, like if it goes the distance, he's going to get taken down a bunch of times. I'm like certain of that, you know? So he will have had to make pretty significant improvements to his, you know, grappling in a year away where he spent a lot of time rehabbing, you know, from that injury. So, and I'm fairly skeptical that has happened.
Don't you think too, if Jack is getting his game going, he's probably just going to finish Bilal? Like, let's say he did make the improvements where it's like he's stuffing takedowns pretty easily, and you know Bilal is on the back foot and Jack is tracking him. I think he's just going to kill him, right?
I do agree with that because Jack is a finisher. You know, he is a killer. So I am on board with that thought process. But yeah, let's talk bets here. What do you got?
Huh? How about you start?
Okay. I have 2 bets as of now. I'm going to make a third bet. I texted you about that a little bit earlier, but we'll get to that in a moment. I bet my biggest bet thus far, actually they're the same. I bet Ion Coutalaba to win 2 units. Obviously, betting on Ion Coutalaba is a sketchy proposition at the best of times. But I also feel like so much of like Coutalaba's bad moments in his career have come against like pretty top tier fighters who can either weather the storm or kind of take back what he's bringing back to them. Like when he fights like low level competition, he tends to just kind of run through them like for the majority of his career. And I look at this fight and it's like, look, I could 100% see Coutalaba not getting the finish early and gassing out and maybe being in some trouble on the back end. But for one, Bukauskas doesn't throw any volume, and he doesn't have all that much power. So it's like you watch the Jacoby fight back, which I would say is probably the most similar, you know, like point that I could find to this in Coutalaba's career. But like Jacoby landed 120 significant strikes that fight. Like Bukauskas isn't landing anywhere near that in this fight, you know? I also just feel like the hardware gap is huge. Like Bukauskas, he was getting KO'd regionally earlier in his career. He's been KO'd a bunch in the UFC. He's been hurt a bunch in the UFC. He has bad defense. Like Coutalaba is way more durable. He hits harder, and Bukauskas is pretty fragile. So it's like I'm getting a guy with a grappling edge who's fought much better competition, who's got the better hardware. I don't know how that's near pick'em. Like I think it should be like minus 150 to give like a lot of credence to Coutalaba potentially gassing out and flaking. But that's generally my thinking there. I just feel like Bukauskas' ceiling is like a pick'em fight to me.
Yeah, I mean, just think about Bukauskas versus Zach Pauga. You know, like is Coutalaba like better than Zach Pauga, who like Bukauskas arguably lost to? You know, he didn't look particularly good in that fight. He hurt Pauga, but Pauga was hurting him too, you know? So in almost every Bukauskas fight, he's getting stunned at some point, you know? Usually the way Coutalaba loses fights is because he loses within the chaos of a fight, right?
Yeah.
I don't really see Bukauskas doing well ever in the chaos of a fight. That's just not how he fights. He's kind of a move side to side and throw a couple punches type of fighter. So I would have been more – I actually went into taping it thinking I was going to bet Bukauskas actually. And then when I taped it, I was refreshed on how little power this guy has. You know, which I think is pretty essential in this matchup because if Coutalaba is moving forward on this guy, I feel like he's eventually going to impose his game. For me, I don't know how it ends, but I do think Coutalaba can win a decision here.
Yeah, I agree. My biggest concern on the Coutalaba side is just the calf kicks. I really didn't like how he dealt with them against Lynch, but I also felt like he let him get off on them for too long before he really started pushing forward in that fight. Now, maybe he'll make that mistake again. I don't think young Coutalaba is going to Harvard anytime soon. But, you know, if that's the upside,
it's pretty low upside.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of my point. So, like, yeah, I mean, I'm with you there.
Well, I told you this too. I really, and you kind of disagreed. I think that Coutalaba, I hope he doesn't like wrestle a bunch. Because I do think that Bukauskas, I think Coutalaba would be smart to just mix it in occasionally. Because I do think Bukauskas is slightly tricky in that department. And Coutalaba has a tendency to like force the takedowns to the point where he gets tired. That's kind of what gets him tired. He doesn't know when
he didn't guess out. Bail. Yeah, he didn't guess out against Lynch just striking with him, like, at all. You know, he came hard at him. Yeah. I think it's sign. I'm not saying it'll necessarily end the same way, although my instinct is it will. I kind of think the closest for the Coutalaba side, I think it's pretty similar to his fight with Tanner Boser in a lot of respects. You know, similar kind of fighter, but although Boser throws a lot of volume, but kind of it's like a calf kicker who's striking Coutalaba is not going to be afraid to exchange with at all, you know? And like those are the best matchups for him, where he can just kind of go and do his thing, you know? And he doesn't have to worry about being a head case. So, yeah.
I agree with that. I'm co-signing.
You're co-signing the Coutalaba? Okay. We're sending the Coutalaba here.
We're probably going to disagree slightly on this one. So do you have a bet on Marc-Andre Barriault?
I do, yeah.
Okay. I taped this one. I'm really not sure what I want to do yet, but I kind of want to see. I texted you this too, where I'm like, what did Bruno look like on IG? Because it's like, I really want to see like what he looks like on scales. I want to see like if they do maybe a media day type of thing. And I hate doing that, but that's kind of what you have to do with this guy at this point, because he's shown up with so many uneven performances, both physically and mentally, that I kind of need to know, like, is he actually locked in to fight for this fight? Did he actually train? Because I don't even think he trained for the last fight. He showed up looking kind of fat and like disinterested. So if he shows up like that, I think MAB is going to kill him. But if he doesn't, I actually think that there's some underrated aspects to this fight. I know that MAB has this huge volume edge, right? But I do think Bruno can touch this guy. And I also think he can land some calf kicks, because Bruno does this really cool shuffle where, like, when he comes in with his 1-2, he, changes his stance and then he lands a calf kick. That's sort of how his game is. And he also lands some pretty nasty body kicks. So I could see a situation here where it's a bit of a teep battle and it goes the distance, a bunch of kicking. And then it comes down to maybe like a few moments. Like, I don't think Marc-Andre Barriault has looked particularly good. So everybody's saying Bruno's looked pretty bad, but I don't think he's looked particularly good in a lot of fights. But
has Marc-Andre Barriault ever looked particularly good in his career?
I mean, at one point I thought he did, but only against bums.
I'll say this. If I wasn't going to be there, I'd probably just wait to play it live. I just don't know what live's going to be like while I'm there. Like, if I'm going to, like, am I going to be able to refresh Buckeye and see it live there on my phone? I'm not sure,
Sorry, really quick to answer your question. The one time he looked good was Eric Anders.
He did look good against Anders. That is true. That was pretty funny. That was the night my youngest son was born. And so, like, I was like, because he was 6 weeks early. So, like, he was in the incubator, and like the doctor is at like 9 p.m. They're like, okay, like, there's not, he's sleeping. You're not going to be able to do anything here. You should get some rest. So I was like, well, I don't know if I'm going to get rest, but I am going to go watch UFC in our room. And I was like watching the fight really closely. I remember I bet Barriault live like 3 times, and everybody at our Discord was like, Anders won. And I was like, what fight were you guys watching? Like, I was like, it seemed like a clear-cut 3-0, and everyone's like, 29-28 Anders is better than 3-0 Barriault. All right, if you say so.
You're sharpest when the night you have a kid, right? Because you have so much clarity at that point.
And dead sober.
Yeah, dead sober. The rest of us are drunkenly clicking Eric Anders. Uh, yeah, no, I mean, I thought he won the fight. I've watched it a couple times since. I mean, it was a fun fight. It's honestly one of Eric Anders' funner
Yeah.
fights. It's a good fight. But yeah, I mean, he looked very fetal against Joe Pyfer, like almost like he just accepted that he was a beta. And then the Dustin Soltzfus one, I mean, how hilarious is that? He gets into a pocket swinging exchange with Dustin Stoltzfus and gets flatlined.
So you know what's funny? I actually, and it's not even, I am not at quite as concerned about his chin as many are. I was more concerned in the context of this fight with the Pyfer fight than the Stoltzfus fight. Like, he was a moron in the Stoltzfus fight, but when you're swinging like that in that weight class and you get clipped on the chin, I mean, you can go to sleep. Like, that's not like, you know, it was moronic to go and do that, but like, I think like Stoltzfus landing a haymaker flush on his chin and putting him out cold doesn't really tell me much. The way he backed up against Pyfer and just kind of ate a shot to the, like, it was kind of the top of his head and went down, did concern me a fair amount. I don't
like about the Stoltzfus thing really quick though. So his whole game though is to be in close.
Yeah.
And that is not Stoltzfus's game at all. And Stoltzfus literally flatlined him. Like Pyfer, even in the Chris Curtis fight, or I'm sorry, Marc-Andre Barriault, he was trying so desperately to get that close game in that fight, right? Like in his moments, he'd try and collar tie and throw an elbow. He got that opportunity against Stoltzfus. Think about it. Really think about the fight. Stoltzfus had him in a finishing sequence. So he had all of the wind taken out of his sail. They stand up, and Marc-Andre has him exactly where he wants him. He has him close in range, and he just he loses the entire exchange. Like it wasn't like he did anything right. He just got killed, you know?
My instinct was he like spent that whole round on bottom and was like, I have to get this back. Like I'm going to put it on him. And then it just did not go. Yeah. It did not go the way that he thought it was going to go. I don't know. I look at it and I'm like, yeah, I mean, I can see why people would be worried about Barriault getting killed. Like, but it's not, yes, he's been knocked out 2 fights in a row, but they're not the first 2 times he's been knocked out. The dude got iced bad by Chidi back in the day too. You know, I do think he can get iced early in this fight, but there's 2 things for me. The first is like, I think Silva's power is a bit overrated. Did you know he only has 2 knockdowns in the UFC? Like in his career? Yeah. Like he hasn't really, other than Tavares and who the fuck was the other one? I can't even remember off the top of my head. But like he hasn't hurt
Beverly
a ton
Hills
of guys. Yes, Jordan Wright. Like the most chinny, like 2 guys who are historically chinny, but Jordan Wright, like the most chinny ever. He hasn't really like hurt people in the UFC all that often, you know, even when he's had success. And now it's like, you know, I'm hearing all this stuff about, you know, his huge anxiety disorder, and he's talking about how like he just can't get switched on in the cage and all this. And it's like, dude, this motherfucker is not the guy you want to not be getting switched on against, you know? Like, I think he can knock him out, but like when I rewatch like the Weidman fight in particular, even more than the Mearshart fight, like Mearshart, okay, that was a horrible performance, but like Mearshart is like low key a sneaky, solid striker. You know, he's slow and weird, but like
it's awkward,
very awkward. He's had some success against like decent strikers in the past. Chris Weidman in this stage of his career should not be outstriking you. About the 2.5 to 1, too, of all things. Like that is like Weidman couldn't even. I bet Weidman, and like when he couldn't get Silva down flat in round 1, I was like, oh my god, he's gonna go to sleep. And then round 2, he just comes out and boxes with him, and I'm like, how? What is happening right now? You know.
So that's the bear case. I agree. The Weidman fight is the bear case for Silva.
Yeah,
I think that's the biggest bear indicator.
I think his downside is a lot lower than Mab's downside, in my opinion. And I also think his scope to win the fight is like a lot, because like once Barriault kind of gets into his like berserker mode, if he gets into it, it probably is going to snowball on Bruno pretty fucking hard. You know, I just can't see him holding up under that if Barriault kind of gets into his, you know, crazy heavy clinch game. But you know, yeah. I mean, early in this fight, I mean, look, Barriault's dropped rounds to some pretty shitty fighters. I mean, Julian Marquez, you know, that he did not look great early in that fight. He didn't look great against Dalcha early. So,
Nope.
like, I think Bruno, I actually was even thinking about potentially playing under with it in tandem. Like, I think the under is like plus 130, the under 1.5. Because I don't think it's inconceivable Barriault could finish Silva fairly early. And I think a lot of Silva's win equity is tied to that under 1.5.
I wouldn't play a 1.5 though, because Barriault hasn't proven to be a reliable finisher at all.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. But it's like, I mean, I have a very
I get the head case angle, but like I had Barriault finish props against who's that absolute bum, Abu Azaitar, and I was hunting my butt. He only got it in the last 4 seconds, and this guy was so gassed. You know what I mean? Like,
he lost round 1 to Abu Azaitar.
I was furious in this fight. I'm like, is he really not going to finish this guy? Like, are you kidding me? Like. So, like, I feel like he's not a very good finisher.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. But I just feel like, I don't know. I feel like Bruno's best case is like I made Bruno early KO like 25%. And I feel like it's pretty hard to give him more than 10%, to win the fight past like 6 to 7 minutes. I don't know if you disagree with that, but like, I just feel like if the fight turns, it's going to turn,
I do disagree with that actually, because I think so. Like, I get what you're saying about the knockdowns, because I already looked at that when I was like, that was the first thing I looked at when I was watching the fights before I watched the tape. He does hit hard. Knockdowns are not always the biggest indicator. Like, you could watch to how people are reacting. I mean, like, honestly, if Bruno hit Barriault with the shots he hit Shara with, Barriault would be unconscious for sure. And there were moments in the Weidman fight where he was actually hitting Chris, and you could tell Chris was like not doing well with it at all. And Chris was pretty fortunate. It wasn't just the fouls at the end. He had multiple fouls throughout.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of eye pokes, a lot of significant fouls at important times in the fight. So, yeah, I understand that why. And I think it's regardless, it's a terrible look for Bruno. I think mostly because the fact that Weidman was teeping him so much. That's actually the thing that's most concerning to me, because Barriault throws a lot of those. If he just accepts those, he's going to easily lose this fight, I think. But, yeah, I do think he's a bigger hitter than the knockdowns are showing, at least in my opinion.
I mean, he's certainly a bigger hitter than Barriault. There's no question about that. I mean, I think that's pretty clear. I just feel like if he starts to slow, and especially with how it seems like when Bruno breaks these days, he just breaks, and that's it. Like, I would be very surprised if Barriault's game starts getting going and like Bruno like stages like a miraculous rally where suddenly like, he's like summoning a second win. Like, the dude, it's so frustrating. I bet him against
Sanchez.
Dude, oh my God.
He's done it. He has done it in fights.
He has done it, but like, I mean, the Shara fight, I remember watching that because I bet Bruno in that fight.
You try taking those fucking body shots.
But even round 3, he's on top of him and just basically letting Shara kill him from bottom,
Yeah, because he's like fucking hurting, bro. In round 2, when he got those takedowns, I swear to God, he was like feeling like so much relief because he was no longer taking body shots. He was cooked in round 2.
Yeah, that's fair. But yeah, the other fight I'm going to bet is Jessica Andrade. I think I'm going to do it.
I think I'm on this.
Yeah, I like because I taped it. I taped some more of it, and I keep thinking about it, and I feel like and I've seen like people make comments this week about her bottom game, and I feel like the entire sentiment in Andrade has gone from like, oh, Andrade might not be fully checked in anymore, to Andrade is a bad grappler. If Jasmine gets on top of her, it's over. And it's like, Andrade for most of her career was considered a good grappler. Like, this is a woman who beat Raquel Pennington at 135 pounds. I don't. Suddenly, she's a bad grappler because she got subbed by Erin Blanchfield and subbed by Tatiana Suarez in a fight where she got off bottom, 3 times. Like, she's got a pretty good get-up game. She's got pretty good takedown defense, and she is like miles better than Jasmine on the feet. I'm not saying Jasmine can't get her down a bunch of times and dominate her with physicality. I think it's a possibility, but not even a possibility. It might even be the most likely outcome of the fight. But I feel like, dude, everybody was betting Myra against fucking Jasmine, like minus 220 last fight. And now people want to bet her at minus 300 against Jessica Andrade? Like, what are we doing, you know? Like, Myra, literally, if you put her on bottom, she only has, like, basically an armbar and a triangle, and if you pass her, she's got nothing there. That was the entire threat of that fight. Ariana Silva, same thing. Like, I bet Jasmine 4 fights in a row, but, like, it reminds me a lot of the Dern fight, where she was a big dog because she just got subbed by Blanchfield, and Dern has great jiu-jitsu, you know? And now we're here again, and she's got huge advantages in this fight, you know, and the market is pricing it like she basically needs a Hail Mary KO to win the fight. And I just don't see that at all. Like, what do you think?
Yeah, it's funny. You mentioned some of the stuff that we were talking about a little bit, like literally like a couple hours ago, but you had mentioned something to me that I completely agree with, which is the fact that she stood up in these fights, right? So she stood up, and I rewatched these fights, and it was a belly out stand up in the fights. So I remembered why I thought Jessica's game on bottom was bad, because I rewatched the fights, and she does definitely look like she's lost some ability to move her hips since her back injury. You can kind of see it not only in her striking, but in her grappling. She's just much stiffer. But that doesn't really matter if you're a smart fighter like she is, because she just does a belly out, stand up to a single leg and get an underhook and stand up. And she's like a pretty compact woman. So it's pretty tough. Even Tatiana, you know, she'd have her in a front headlock and try and snap her down, but it was pretty difficult for her early in the fight. I don't think Jasmine's Tatiana level. I know Tatiana looked bad last fight against Weili Zhang, but I don't think Jasmine's like grappling necessarily is as good as Tatiana, especially the jiu-jitsu. And the big thing that stood out to me here in this fight is the speed. Like, I know that Jasmine fought a perfect fight last night against it's a belly out stand up what I do. Yeah, that is. Yeah, just like that. So I know that Jasmine fought like a really smart technical fight. I think you'll agree against MBS. Like, her distance management with her striking was good. But in round 2, if you rewatch that fight, when MBS actually marched forward and was throwing on her, she was landing, dude, and landing a lot. And Jasmine was doing what she did in a lot of those early fights in her UFC career, like the Pilastri fight, where she's just reacting kind of poorly to the shots, you know? And I'm not so sure that Jasmine has this quick takedown ability. She's kind of a sloth, you know what I mean? So like when those transitions are happening, I watched Andrade on the tape, you know, deal pretty well with those transitions against Lauren Murphy. You know, I watched her even against Shevchenko. I know Shev took her down a bunch of times, but there were a few times when Andrade beat her in the position, right? She beat her in the position, kind of shrugged her off. She did it against Tatiana. So, like, is Jasmine going to be more physically imposing? Maybe when she ends up on top. But Jasmine's never been somebody that's been really good at getting people down. Like, would you agree with that? Like, she is not that fast. She is not that good of a wrestler. She is good enough. But, like, her magic is when she's on top of you, she does a lot of damage. I don't think it's getting you down.
She literally struggled to get down Lipsky early in their fight. The first time she got her down was off a caught kick, you know, is what she needed for it. I'm with, like, I think Jasmine's an elite grappler. You know, if she can get to like a dominant position, she is excellent at holding position and controlling it.
I want to add something to it. She's a mean grappler.
Yeah, that's very mean.
That's like her, like, for me, the thing that separates her from a lot of people is she gets really mean when she's on top. But will it matter here if she can't get Jessica down? Because if she can't get down, like, I get that she looked pretty good point fighting against MBS, but like, Jessica's not going to fuck off, dude, and she's going to be throwing hammers at her. And we've seen Jasmine not deal with that too well in a couple fights.
Well, and what's going to happen if she eats like 6 to 7 hard calf kicks and is suddenly struggling to, change levels as fast? Because that's going to happen in this fight. Unless she's getting takedowns right away off the rip, she is going to get her leg butchered for a lot of the fight, in my opinion. I don't know, man. I look at it and I'm like, okay, like the worst case scenario at plus 270 is Jasmine looks like minus 500, looks her price, gets her down a bunch, beats her up on the mat, is what it is. I also, if you told me Andrade comes out and like mostly stuffs the takedowns and or works up and beats the shit out of her, I would not be shocked at all. Like literally would not shock me. No. And so it's like on the one, you have like a wide range of hindsight outcomes, which is probably anywhere from 15 to 20% to Andrade, like 60%. I just feel like the upside on her side is huge. Pepe is saying the fact that she's a strawweight. She is, I agree. But I mean, she's won fights at bantamweight. I don't think she has like Lauren Murphy, in my opinion, is a pretty good wrestler, and she shut her out. She got deep a bunch and just completely shut it down. And maybe
I do think Lauren looked kind of old, to be fair.
Yeah, and she was.
But she was doing well with the transitions. That's what I like about it. Jessica was like beating her a step ahead. She was just looking better in the meta of what they were doing.
Yeah, and like, look, I mean, it is possible that Jasmine is just too strong for her. Like, I think that is, to be honest, in my head, I'm like, that's like the best case for the line is Jasmine can just bully the shit out of her and is way too strong. Like, that's entirely possible. If it happens, I won't be like shocked at it. But I also feel like, Jessica is like, she's the level of competition she's fought has been fucking insane, man. And the women who have out-grappled her are like insanely good grapplers. Like even Tatiana, she's not the grappler she was like 5 years ago, but she's still a fucking damn good wrestler. And she was down blocking her fine. Like, the 2 or 3 takedowns Tatiana hit was basically getting stuffed on the single and kind of ducking under on it. Like Jasmine's not hitting that shit against her. I'm like almost 100% positive. My biggest concern is like Jasmine can get to the body lock and just kind of toss her around from there, and there's nothing she can do about it, just because she is so small.
Well, what if she just gets back up though? That's the thing, because we're forgetting some things about Jasmine. One thing that people are forgetting is that she's looked bad in fights like the Pilastri fight. Another thing we're forgetting is a common thing that we would bring up with Jasmine before she's looked dominant is that she does have a tendency in fights where it's competitive to fade in round 3. What if this fight is competitive and she starts to fade in round 3 and she's dealing with Andrade's hammers? Andrade is never going to fade. You know what I mean? She's just going to keep coming at you. So there's just these little factors here where it's like, how can Jasmine be minus like 3? Is she like 350, 400 right now?
320, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Last time I looked. Yeah, 320.
Yeah, well, on some books she's 370. On Bet Online she's 320. Yeah, so in that range. That's a pretty high ask for the hardest fight of her career.
Yeah, that's like my point. It's like if I'm wrong on Andrade and she gets mauled, like I won't be upset. Like I've made a ton of money betting Jasmine, but like I feel like this is a good time to like get off the ship. It's like when I'm seeing people say 1 takedown and it probably goes downhill for Andrade. It's like, well, I just don't think that's. I know that's not true. So it's like if that I mean, it just tells me that sentiment is kind of completely swung way too hard here. And I think Jasmine's great, by the way. Like I won't be shocked if she wins the fight. She's minus 300, right? I think she's a top 5 to 8 woman at 125. But like, I kind of think Jessica Andrade is as well.
I agree, and I don't know. I just feel like. Plus 280. I hate to say it's lean on this, but I just feel like it's like, how wrong could you really be?
Well, that's the thing, right? Because it's like if you're laying like minus 300 on Jazz, it's like your hope is she's minus 400, right? Which is like a 5% edge basically against the line. Whereas, like my view on Andrade is it could be a bad bet against the line, but also I think there are worlds where it's like you're getting like 20% on the line, you know? I'm not saying that is the case, but I think it's not impossible, you know? It's like the Dern fight. She was plus 185. The true price was probably Andrade minus 200 in that fight.
Yeah. The other thing too is a lot of people are feeling, and I know I've had this feeling a little bit too, is that Andrade is, not terribly motivated. But it's not like I'm betting her at plus 150 or plus 175. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That type of stuff is like really baked into the line at this point. I mean, overbaked. So where it's like, it's kind of screaming at us that like the only way that this makes sense is if Andrade has like a serious injury or something.
I mean, betting Jasmine is like buying Bitcoin after it's made a 30% move up, and being like, I think it'll keep going up. And it's like, it might, but like you missed
that right now. You don't think I should buy Bitcoin right now?
I actually do think you should buy Bitcoin right now. not financial advice, but I mean, Ethereum made like a 30% move up the last week, but like you look at her lines from the last couple fights, and it's like she was against Fatima Klein minus 130, minus 250 to Lipsky, 250 to Silva, 320 to Andrade. Like she was plus 240 to Maverick and plus 112 to Tracy Cortez. It just like, how is this where she is the highest, biggest favorite she's been other than Priscilla Cachoeira, which isn't even a real fight, like how is this, how does that make sense? Sell high. That's my view on it.
You might lose, but like you're not going to lose by much, I feel like.
Before we sign off on this, I want to ask there's two fights I want to get your opinion on. We don't need to go into as much depth here.
Rapid opinions.
Yeah, because I am considering betting Beksat Almacan against Brad Katona. Brad Katona seems to be one of the darlings of the week, from what I can see.
I wish you wouldn't
plus
have
136. Do you like the other side?
No, I don't. I would never bet Katona right now because Katona, I think I was at one point I was talking with somebody this week. I don't know who it was, but I basically was saying like we kind of already know what Brad Katona is, and it's like you're getting plus 130, plus 135 on a guy who we know is going to fight close in every fight. And you've got this guy, Bezcat, right? Beksat, where you don't really know his true upside yet at all. And also, Katona, he hasn't really done well against guys who can actually hit him, right? Yeah. Like power punchers. So it's like Armfield was having a field day on him. So it's like, is Beksat like that much worse than Armfield? We don't really know. But the price of admission here is getting low enough where it's worth, I feel like, the roll of the dice here.
Well, so like I feel like, so that's similar to how I feel. Like I feel like an average UFC bantamweight is probably close to minus 200 against Katona, in my opinion. Like the dude fights close. He is a zero finishing threat, more or less, at this level. And we've seen him basically fight like the lowest of the low to very, very, very competitive decisions. So it's like, I don't know. I think Beksat's tape is decent. He obviously hits hard. He can grapple a bit. It's like, what is the absolute worst case scenario on Beksat here? That it turns out he's not UFC level and you lose. That could happen. But like Jesse Butler is not UFC level, and that wound up being like a shockingly competitive fight. You know what I mean? Whereas, like, if Beksat ends up being like an above average UFC fighter, you're getting like a gift of a line here. And in my opinion, it's pretty obvious, irrespective of where you think this guy is, he's got a huge edge in finishing upside here. I think he is not the only one who can finish the fight, but I would wager it should be like 2.5 to 1 in favor of him in terms of finishing ability and moment ability. Like, would you disagree?
I think you might be able to go a little higher.
Yeah, and that's what I'm so it's like with that dynamic, unless you think Katona is about to turn into Umar Nurmagomedov, like why is he plus 130? Why is he not like plus 170, plus 180? Like I felt like the Matsumoto fight we got his absolute ceiling performance from Brad Katona. He fought very, very well in that fight. I felt like as well as he's fought in the UFC, and it just wasn't enough, you know?
Well, here's the thing. I want to give people context because we were there too.
Yeah.
Brad Katona had the entire warehouse willing him to win. Everybody was screaming for Brad Katona to win this fight. Everybody was cheering for Brad Katona. They were reacting to everything he did because everybody had money on Brad Katona, and he lost.
Yeah, it's true. So yeah, I'm so you're aligned with me there. And the other one, I am curious because I'm thinking of potentially 2 bets here, depending what the line does. But Mike Malott, Charles Radke, what are your thoughts? Hit me with them.
I'm a little sus of the line movement, not gonna lie.
So I said it at the start. The reason I'm not betting Malott right now is the line movement has been very one way, like scarily one way.
It sucks, dude. He's the hometown guy. He's a guy who normally gets bet up to big juice, and suddenly he's getting bet down against a guy who I'm like not even remotely high at all on. So there's something sus with this where I'm like not really digging it at all because I do think Malott is overall the more skilled fighter, but something just stinks here for me personally.
I totally agree because I think he's a lot more skilled than Radke is. I honestly think Radke is not a bum by any means, but I think he's a pretty meat and potatoes plotting boxer who's not all that hard to deal with if you have decent footwork and precise striking. What I am interested in, though, like very interested, especially seeing like the amount of people taking the under here. I like the over, and I like the goes the distance in this fight. I feel like you watch Malott and how he fights. Dude, he's not going to fucking bite down like Gilbert Urbina and like fight Radke in the pocket for 15 minutes. You know, that's not going to happen. He's going to like prod him with kicks, like move away, try to land the occasional counter. What do you think on the total?
Yeah, I mean, the total doesn't make sense unless Malott gets him down and submits him, right?
Yeah, that which could happen. But I mean, Radke's a legend.
I don't think Radke's a bad wrestler.
No, or a bad grappler. He seems like a pretty good grappler from what I've seen.
Okay. I mean, I'd say it's probably his strength, that in his left hook, right? But yeah, I do think I could see like a point fighting style fight where Malott is just staying long and quick on his feet on the outside while Radke tries to track him down. But I'm a little confused. This is the struggle with this fight for me because everybody loves Radke, and the line is showing that their love is correct, right? Because usually we see this with these types of fights where we see a bunch of people loving Radke and the line isn't moving, but the line is moving like significantly in his favor.
Over $1.
Yeah, they're like significant. Where it's like for me, that's why the whole thing smells to me. But when I watch Radke, like I don't think he's particularly like good at pursuing somebody.
Yeah,
like in his fights. So it's like stylistically, if Malott like does decide he wants to point fight him, sure. If Radke gets in the pocket, I do think that like Malott is, you know, a bit of a fragile, bad reactor to shots, right? So that could look bad. But I do think the majority of the minutes, if they're kickboxing, is going to be Malott landing, you know, clean shots on the outside. So my gut tells me it is GTD and Malott by decision. But again, the line movement, this is the only fight where the line movement on the card where it actually is like confusing to me and suspicious to me.
I completely agree with you. Cause like, I mean, a lot of people like Chuck Buffalo. I like him. He's a fun fighter, but I also feel like you look at his history, like pre-UFC and in the UFC, and I'm a little confused at what he's done that makes everybody like so bullish on him. Like the guy, you could make an argument that his fight with Blood Diamond was a draw with the point deduction, you know, like that, and that's about as bearish as it gets. Like, I guess he fought Prates like semi-close.
I didn't think so.
I didn't think so either.
He kind of like baited him into getting killed. That's how
and like, okay, he knocked out Samuelsberger. Samuelsberger seems toast, honestly, if we're being honest. And
also was never anything.
And Gilbert Urbina got clowned worse by Tresean Gore than he did by, you know, Charles Radke. Like the guy is not that good a fighter. I mean, it was a bad bet, but I bet Orion Cosey against him. I feel like that says a lot, you know? I don't know.
So Radke, to go back to your original fight you were talking about. I mean, Radke was brought in as a guy that potentially Blood Diamond could beat. That was the viewpoint of the organization, was we want Blood Diamond to win because he's our Australian like storyline guy. So let's bring in this Radke guy for him to fight because we think, it'll be competitive. And it turned out they were correct with Blood Diamond.
Yeah, which says a lot. Like I am not, and I'm by no means saying I think Mike Malott is like a title contender. I don't. But I also think the last 90 seconds against Magny are coloring a lot of people's views on him. And like they were an ugly 90 seconds to be sure, but he also beat the brakes off a top 15 guy for 13 minutes prior to, that meltdown. And like the Giles fight, yeah, it was low pace, but he outlanded him almost 2-1. It's not like Giles, other than the occasional jab, Malott just sat back, waited, and countered. Like I didn't think it was the bad look that everybody is like talking about it as it is.
Oh, smart fight.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, Cook Combat saying average 135 or minus 200 versus Katona is nuts. I mean, is it? Let's look at like Brad Katona's career in the UFC. I mean, the guy beat Cody Gibson in a 50-50 war.
Arguably,
who's 37. Arguably lost. He lost to Hunter Azure by unanimous decision. He beat Matthew Lopez in his retirement fight in a very close decision. He beat Jay Cuccinello, who the UFC, even though he made the finals of the Ultimate Fighter, did not deem suitable to give a contract to, even though every guy that makes the finals gets one. And he beat Jesse Butler, who belongs nowhere near the UFC. Like Katona, I love Brad Katona. Don't get me wrong. Like he is a true blue-collar fighter, great cardio, great work rate. He does not separate from fighters, though. He can't finish people. He's not a great wrestler. He's a bit hittable. He'll fight for your money, but he's not going to win for it all that often.
He's an awkward guy, dude. The way he strikes even is just very wide and weird, and like he's just not a natural at all. But I will give him some credit. He's tough as fuck.
Dude, he is, and he's
tough.
He clearly works his fucking ass off. Pepe saying he knows a couple sharp people on Katona. It doesn't surprise me. Like, I don't think Beksat's a lock by any means. I just feel like when you're dealing with a fight where, like, I don't see personally, like, huge top time upside for Katona, and I see moment and finishing upside on the other side, it's like, is plus 130 good with that dynamic? I mean, how often is it, He can obviously win the fight. So this is, to me, is a gambling fight. So it's a gambler's fight where it's like, if you think about it, Pepe, is Katona, everything you know about him, his upside, who he is, his potential, where he's going to go, how he's going to show up in this fight, is that worth, hey, man, you want an extra 30 cents? Feels like kind of skimpy to me, where it's like, no, I think I'd rather like take the dice roll on the other guy who, yeah, maybe he turns out to suck, but I'm not going to feel like terrible about it because I'm going to be like, I already know who Brad is. I'd be pretty surprised if Katona just pumped him and wins an easy 30-27. That would surprise me, honestly.
Well, he's never done that.
Yeah, exactly.
Not what Katona does.
It's not. And that's kind of more or less my point about the fight. But yeah, guys, I think that'll do, unless there's any other fights you want to highlight, Shawn, or any other lines.
Let me look here. I will say a couple of the ones that are standing out to me here is Barriault with 71% of Tapology votes. Jastavicius.
Does he really? That's scary.
Jastavicius with 83% of Tapology votes. Kind of standing out to me, those ones that we already talked about. But yeah, in general, I think we'd bore everybody if we talked about, Aldo Zahabi or, any of these other fights that I just.
Well, we wouldn't. Would we bore them more than the actual fight is going to bore them?
That's good. Fair point. Very good point.
Yeah, I don't have much to say on that though. Aldo,
I think we're good. I like a nice, tight, succinct show. Right, where you went an hour and 20. I think we covered a lot.
Yeah. So what do you think? We'll do it for we'll run it back for probably the next pay-per-view. I don't know if you looked at the next fight night. That's we have a fight night after this. And then we have a week off, and then we have the O'Malley. Oh no. Yeah, we have O'Malley Dvalishvili June 6th.
Well, here's what I will say. I've been so everybody knows, so John doesn't get any of this shit. I'm the one who has the horrible schedule where I have to keep canceling things. But I will say I think that we should stick to pay-per-views for now. But I think that that means a pay-per-view that's going to happen, but also recapping a previous pay-per-view.
I like that. So maybe we run it next week.
We should do next week, I think, because we'll recap 15. And it'll be cool for people to hear about your experience at the event and hanging out with Chad. In fact, I wouldn't be opposed to having Chad as our first guest next week.
That would be exciting. Yeah, we could have Chad on here. I am down with that. And we can talk about the human sacrifice that is Gilbert Burns this week coming up. So
yeah.
But anyway, guys.
Should we promote our shit? Should we
promote Yeah. So obviously follow us on Twitter. Our handles are here. Also, Shawn and myself, if you guys have any kind of sports books, PPH accounts through a bookie, credit accounts, hit us up. Give us a shout on Twitter. We'll happily pay you for them. I'll give you $150 for each account that you give me. Shawn will do the same thing. Would make us both happy. We'd be thrilled. It's a gambling show, so surely someone out there has them.
We will help you too. So if you want them to, just help us. Help you. We'll help you. Okay. You help us. We help you.
So if you have a bookie that you settle up with weekly, hit me up. Hit Shawn up. We'll hook you up. It'll work out for everybody. Anyway, guys, thanks for coming out. Drop a like, subscribe. We'll be back next week. Hopefully Thursday, though it's going to depend on this fucker's schedule. So we'll see what happens then. Peace, guys.
Later, guys.